The aroma of freshly baked parathas filled the small but cheerful kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, casting warm patterns across the breakfast table where Sara stood, her hands moving with practiced ease. To anyone looking in, she was the image of a devoted wife and mother. Hair tied neatly, a soft smile on her lips, her presence both comforting and steady. Imran, her husband of 8 years, sat at the table, scrolling through his phone with one hand while sipping tea with the other. He was still in his crisp office shirt, tie loosened, his briefcase leaning against a chair. He always looked like he belonged in a business magazine, confident, ambitious, charming. Sara often joked that she'd fallen for him the moment she saw him laugh, and even now, she sometimes caught herself staring as though she were still the shy girl from years ago. Across from him sat Ayan, their 7-year-old son, swinging his legs and humming tunelessly as he spread jam on his toast. He was their miracle, the glue that bound their family in warmth and laughter. His boundless curiosity filled their home with constant chatter, his questions often leaving Sara both amused and baffled. That morning felt no different from the hundreds before it. Yet, hidden between the casual clinks of cutlery and the faint hiss of the stove, there were tiny, unspoken currents. "You're leaving early today?" Sara asked as she placed a plate before Imran. He nodded without looking up. "Big meeting with a client. Might be home late. Don't wait for me." It wasn't unusual. Imran's work often demanded long hours, but lately, late had been happening more often. And there is something else. Something almost imperceptible. He was quicker to glance at his phone, slower to meet her eyes. Sara told herself it was just stress. Everyone had seasons of distance in marriage. Her thoughts were interrupted by Ayan's voice. "Daddy, can you help me with my school project tonight?" Imran smiled faintly. "We'll see, champ. Maybe this weekend." The smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He checked his watch, muttered something about traffic, and stood to leave. As he reached for his briefcase, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and without a word, stepped into the hallway to answer it. Sara froze for a fraction of a second, then shook her head and continued stacking plates. She had always trusted him, fiercely, unquestioningly. Whatever that call was, she decided it didn't matter. Minutes later, Imran returned, kissed Ayan's hair, brushed his lips against Sara's cheek, and left with the same confident stride she'd always admired. Sara watched him go, unaware that this morning, as ordinary as it seemed, was the first quiet tremor before the ground beneath her life began to crack, that IT began with little things, the kind of shifts most people wouldn't notice unless they were looking closely. Sara hadn't been looking closely at first. She told herself marriage was like the seasons. Some days felt like spring, others like winter. But lately, winter had been creeping in more often. Imran's late nights became routine. His explanations, client dinners, urgent deadlines, last-minute meetings were delivered with an air of casual normalcy that made them hard to question. But Sara noticed the faint scent that lingered on his shirts when he returned. Not hers, not their homes, but something delicate and unfamiliar, like a perfume that clung too stubbornly to be an accident. She didn't say anything. Instead, she folded his shirts a little more neatly, prepared his dinner plates, even when he said he'd already eaten, and convinced herself that love meant patience. Ayan, however, was less restrained. One evening, while Sara was helping him with his homework, he looked up and asked in that disarming way only children can, "Mama, why does Daddy have another family?" The pencil froze between her fingers. "What did you say?" she asked, forcing her voice into a lightness she didn't feel. "I heard him on the phone." Ayan said matter-of-factly. He said, "I miss you too, and our little one." I thought I was the only little one. Sara's lips curved into a strained smile. "You must have misunderstood, sweetheart. Daddy talks to a lot of people for work." But the words lodged like a splinter in her chest. That night, she replayed the moment in her mind while washing dishes, each bubble popping under her hands with a quiet, hollow sound. From that day on, she noticed more. The way Imran tilted his phone away when a message came in. How he sometimes stepped out onto the balcony to take a call, his voice softened into tones she couldn't quite hear. The small, distracted smiles that weren't meant for her. Her mind began to collect these fragments like puzzle pieces she didn't want to put together. And yet every time she considered confronting him, she saw Ian's face, trusting, innocent, and her resolve faltered. One evening, while Imran was in the shower, Sara reached for his phone on the nightstand. It was locked, something it had never been before. That, more than anything, made her chest tighten. She placed it back exactly where it had been and walked to the kitchen, her hands trembling. Outside, the street was quiet, but inside her heart, the noise was deafening. Sara didn't know it yet, but the splinter Ian had unknowingly driven into her thoughts was beginning to fester. And soon, the truth would no longer wait politely in the shadows. Sara had always believed that silence was a shield, that if she ignored the gnawing unease in her heart, it might eventually fade. But silence, she was learning, could also be a trap, and hers was tightening. The nights felt longer now. When Imran came home, she could sense him entering before he spoke, the muted footsteps, the faint perfume still clinging to his collar, the way his eyes seemed to dart away before settling on her. His smile no longer lingered, his words felt rehearsed. One afternoon, while folding laundry, Sara noticed his phone buzzing on the bed. The screen lit up with a name she didn't recognize, Cameron and Company, an odd label for what looked like a personal number. The message preview was short, almost harmless. "Can't wait to see you." But in her chest, something broke. That night, after Imran stepped into the shower, Sara picked up the phone again. The lock screen stared back at her, demanding a passcode. Her fingers trembled, but instinct guided her. She entered Ian's birthday, and the phone unlocked. The call logs confirmed her fears. The number under Cameron and Company appeared again and again, at all hours, early mornings, late nights, even during weekends when he claimed to be running errands. Heart pounding, she pressed call. A woman's voice answered, hesitant. "Hello." Sara's throat tightened. "This is Imran's wife." There was a long pause, heavy and loaded. The woman didn't hang up, she simply whispered, "I'm sorry." Before the line went dead, Sara sat on the edge of the bed, phone in her lap, staring at the floor. The room felt colder. Somewhere down the hallway, Ian's laughter drifted from the television, a reminder of the fragile world she was about to break. When Imran emerged from the bathroom, towel draped over his shoulder, he sensed the change instantly. Something wrong. Sara met his eyes for the first time in weeks. Who is she? He froze. His lips parted, then closed again. "It's not what you think." Her laugh was bitter. "Then tell me what I should think." For a moment, he looked like a man searching for a door in a room without exits. Finally, he admitted it was a mistake. "It's over." But his words didn't comfort her. They only sharpened the pain. Every memory, every sacrifice, every moment of trust they had built now felt like glass shattering at her feet. In the living room, Ian called out, "Mama, Daddy, come watch with me." Sara forced her voice steady. "Go ahead," she told Imran. "I'll be there in a moment." As he walked away, she knew the truth had found her, and it would not let her go. The days that followed were heavy with an unspoken tension. Conversations became shorter, meals quieter. Imran moved through the house like a guest who had overstayed his welcome, careful not to brush too close to Sara, yet always aware of her presence. Sara found herself drifting through her routines, cooking, cleaning, tucking Ian into bed. But her mind was elsewhere. Each glance at Imran was a reminder of the fracture between them. She had stopped asking for explanations. The truth was already carved into her heart, and there was no undoing it. One evening, rain pattered softly against the windows as the three of them sat at the dinner table. Ian, as always, filled the silence with his chatter, school stories, his latest drawing, questions about everything from dinosaurs to the weather. Sara smiled when he spoke, but her eyes were shadowed. Halfway through his meal, Ian put down his fork and looked from her to Imran. His voice was calm, almost curious. "Mama, if you love someone, do they still leave you for someone else?" The question struck her like a physical blow. Her hand paused midway to her glass. She felt Imran stiffen across the table. For a moment, no one spoke, only the sound of the rain filled the room. Sara swallowed, steadying her voice. Real love, she said softly, means staying. It means choosing each other, even when things are hard. She reached over and smoothed Ayan's hair, masking the tremor in her fingers. And if someone leaves, maybe they didn't understand what love really is. Imran stared at his plate. His fork scraped against porcelain, a sound sharp enough to make her flinch. He didn't meet her eyes. That night, long after Ayan had fallen asleep, Sara stood by the window, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass. She realized she had a choice: stay in the shadow of betrayal or step into a future where she could breathe freely again. When Imran walked into the room, she turned to him. Her voice was steady, though her heart pounded. I think we need time apart. For Ayan. For me. He didn't argue. Maybe he knew this was a battle already lost. He simply nodded, a quiet surrender. Sara lay awake for hours afterward, listening to the rain fade into the early hours of morning. Her mind kept returning to Ayan's question. It had been so simple, so innocent. Yet it had peeled away the last of her denial. In the weeks ahead, she would face hard days. There would be moments of loneliness, moments of doubt. But she knew one truth now with absolute certainty: her son's trust and her own self-respect were worth more than any fragile promise of love. Sometimes she thought, it isn't the betrayal itself that shatters you, but the moment you see its reflection in the eyes of someone you love.